It is my honor to welcome you to the JOI program's 20th anniversary celebration. Thank you so much for joining us. It is our pleasure to be hosted here in Chattanooga, close to the campus of UTC, University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, one of our nice JOI host sites. We've been treated well here the past week. We had a JOI workshop actually leading up to this. We've been here in town and we've been enjoying ourselves quite a bit. So we're in a very merry mood and ready to celebrate this wonderful occasion this evening with all of you. So thank you again for joining us tonight. So just in case anybody is unfamiliar, the Japan Outreach Initiative dispatches Japanese cultural outreach coordinators around the country to teach about Japanese culture, particularly in regions that have less access to Japanese cultural education. And we focus primarily in the South, the Midwest, the mountain states. So with that connection between those regions of the US and Japan, this is one of the few groups that can claim California as one of those flyover states. So it's our pleasure to have you here this evening. We've got a nice presentation for you today. The theme of our celebration this evening is Why JOI Matters, a discussion on grassroots exchange through the prism of history and region. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Gabriel Rebeck. I'm with Laurasian Institution. I'm in the Seattle office. I'll be your MC this evening. It's my pleasure to help facilitate the JOI program, although I very much, whenever I go and speak about JOI with people around the country, I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, the folks that put this program together over the years, over the 2-decade history of this program. And some of those giants are indeed in this room this evening. So as much as I'd love to tell you all about myself and my history with the program, I'm going to try not to talk too much, and hopefully we can hear from some very interesting individuals this evening. I'll be sending out acknowledgments to some of the wonderful people that are in the audience today as we go, so watch for those as we roll along with the evening. But the JOI program is really about building relationships, building friendships. And speaking of relationships, one of the most important relationships for the JOI program is the relationship between Laurasian Institution and the Japan Foundation Center for Global Partnership, CGP. We co-facilitate the program together, and it's a long-standing and wonderful relationship between our two organizations, and we couldn't, so we, from the Laurasian side, we couldn't do it without you, Japan Foundation, so thank you very much. And actually, to represent Japan Foundation, CGP, we have the acting executive director, Hiroko Tsuka, who is going to give a quick address and greeting to everyone here via a video presentation. She is in Tokyo headquarters today. Unfortunately, she can't be here with us, but she has a message for everyone today. So we're going to start by watching that. So, ladies and gentlemen, Hiroko Tsuka.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tsuka Hiroko of Japan Foundation Center for Global Partnership. Thank you very much for coming to Tennessee today for the Japan Outreach Initiative 20th Anniversary Celebration. To implement a successful exchange program, the enthusiasm, cooperation, and dedication of so many stakeholders is vital. So at this 20th Anniversary celebration, while too brief, please allow us to express our heartfelt gratitude to the advisors and supervisors, the coordinators, and the communities around the United States, the Embassy of Japan, and the various consulate generals, and of course, the Laurasian Institution, our co-organizer. Since the JOI program's inception in 2002, 83 JOI coordinators, including the current 19th cohort, have been conducting outreach in communities across the United States and providing opportunities to strengthen ties between Japan and the region. While they have engaged more than 1.12 million individuals, they themselves have cultivated a profound understanding of America by actively participating in U.S. communities. We sincerely believe that cultural interaction and mutual understanding are important outputs from this program. Even after a cohort term concludes, many of those individuals continue to be active bridges between Japan and the United States in both countries, the most valuable achievement. The JOI program has evolved significantly. In 2002, we only dispatched 3 coordinators, one each to Tennessee, Alabama, and North Carolina in the southern U.S. In 2009, the geographic distribution included the Midwest, and this year it expanded further to include the mountain region. And until this year, each cohort was comprised of 3 to 5 individuals, but this year we increased the number to 8. And next fiscal year, we plan to dispatch even more coordinators. There has also been a change in the way JOI coordinators conduct outreach within their communities. In particular, the 17th and 18th cohort faced a great deal of hardship not being able to engage in face-to-face outreach activities due to the global pandemic. Despite these difficulties, however, they were able to continue their outreach activities in a new way, online. Their ingenuity has led to results that transcend physical distances by leveraging their online strengths. Finally, in honor of the 20th anniversary of the JOI program, we refreshed our program logo. Now, a colorful mizuhiki, a traditional Japanese craft which symbolizes connecting people together. So, like mizuhiki, we ask for your continued support and guidance so that the JOI program can connect people from Japan and the United States at the regional and grassroots exchange level and contribute to the further development of mutual understanding between our two countries. Thank you for your time and attention, and please have a good time today.
So having the kind of support that the JOI program enjoys from Japan Foundation CGP is absolutely essential to facilitate a program such as JOI. However, the program itself would be nothing without the support and friendship of the local communities that the JOI coordinators are all dispatched to. So the JOI coordinators have support from Japan Foundation, from the Eurasian Institution, but the real magic comes from when they arrive in their host communities and get the support of the local people that are there. Actually, local politicians, local universities, local groups, they all love our JOI coordinators. And actually, I might use this moment to point out the fact that our year 19 JOI coordinators are indeed in the audience this evening. Do the year 19 coordinators want to maybe stand up for just a moment? They all arrived 3 months ago. Thank you. Yeah, you can have a seat. We've been putting them through a rigorous training program this past week, so if they've got dark circles under their eyes, that would be why. We work them hard. But yeah, the local communities are really an essential part of the JOI experience for these coordinators. And so I'm very happy to say that we also have a video message from Senator Bill Hagerty this evening. He sends a message to the JOI program. Of course, Senator Hagerty is a former U.S. ambassador to Japan and current senator for the great state of Tennessee. So we have a nice message from him, Mr. Bill Hagerty.
Good evening. It's an honor to be speaking to all of you from here in Washington, though I do wish I could be there with you in person at this wonderful 20th anniversary celebration. I want to begin by thanking both the Japan Foundation and the Eurasian Institution for their efforts in coordinating such an important event. I also want to thank the volunteer Japanese coordinators who've worked so hard to promote awareness and understanding of Japan right here in Tennessee. Tennessee has a special relationship with Japan, and I'm grateful for you all here today who contribute to that relationship. As former U.S. ambassador to Japan, I had the incredible experience of living in Tokyo as I worked to strengthen the relationship between the United States and Japan. It was an experience I was fortunate to share with my family, who very quickly claimed Tokyo as their second home. One could argue that Japan is not only America's strongest ally in the region, but perhaps even across the world. We all know that our nation's alliance with Japan is the cornerstone of peace and prosperity in the entire Indo-Pacific region. Our friends in Japan live in a tough neighborhood where our alliance is tested daily, but it remains strong as ever. To bring it closer to home, Tennesseans and Japanese have shared values that have fueled a flourishing relationship, both economically and culturally. For starters, I know firsthand that we both have an appreciation for good whiskey. And right here in Tennessee, we see the fruits of our friendship every time we go to the annual Cherry Blossom Festival in Nashville, which happens to be the largest Japanese festival in the entire South. Japanese people also appreciate the fact that Tennessee has so much to offer: the great outdoors, our exceptional colleges and universities, and the economic opportunities our state provides. Japanese leaders understand the extent to which our two economies can strategically work together to create more opportunities for our citizens. And this has been felt firsthand by the great workers of Tennessee. Today, over 53,000 Tennesseans are directly employed by Japanese-owned businesses, and Japan accounts for over $19 billion in capital investment for our state. We're proud of our ties to the incredible Japanese-owned companies that are there, like Bridgestone, Denso, Mitsubishi, and Nissan, just to name a few. I believe wholeheartedly that the future of our collaboration looks bright and will continue to flourish as it has over the last couple of decades. This is a goal I know that all of you here today share, and I'm so honored to work hand in hand with you in this effort. As U.S. Senator, I intend to fight every day to make our country, and especially Tennessee, the most attractive place in the world to invest capital and grow our economy. And I do that with strong relationships like that with Japan in mind. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you virtually today. I know that you all will enjoy the interesting panels that have been planned for later on this evening. May God bless.
And my thanks to the office of Bill Hagerty for providing that lovely video for us. And on that note, I would also like to mention that he's indeed correct. Everybody loves a good whiskey. That moment where he talks about the whiskey that they enjoy, of course, here in Tennessee, our program director, Yume Hidaka, has been enjoying Chattanooga whiskey, somewhere around here, Chattanooga whiskey this week during the JOI training. And that reminds me of the concept of nomunication, if anybody speaks Japanese. So the word nomu means to drink, and of course that's combined with communication. Nomunication means coming together and drinking together and communicating. And of course, doesn't necessarily need to be alcohol, but I like that idea because these grassroots connections, friendships, are exactly what we're here celebrating this evening. So to speak just a little bit more about what the JOI program is, who it is, and who we are, we've actually put together a little informational video that we'd like to show next. A nice little animation talking about the program itself. And we're actually pretty happy to debut this. As Tsuka-san mentioned in her video earlier from Japan Foundation, we did introduce a new logo for this 20th anniversary celebration based on a mizuhiki design, which, as she mentioned, is a Japanese sort of string art. It's on envelopes that you give gifts or cards for like weddings, that kind of thing. It represents people coming together and sort of life changes and events, that kind of thing. So that coming together, that grassroots level friendship was something that we felt represented our program well, and that's why we've chosen this new design to represent us. So we've put it up all over the place. You'll see it around this evening. If you got the card at the registration table, there's a QR code on there. That'll take you to a little web page that will explain a little bit more about the concept behind the design of that logo. So if you have some time, please take a look. This little video that I'm going to show in just a moment, the imagery is all based on that design of the mizuhiki. So please keep an eye out for that. And let's take a look.
The Japan Outreach Initiative is celebrating 20 years of promoting understanding and awareness of Japanese culture in the United States. We select talented professionals from all across Japan and dispatch them to host communities around the U.S. Our JOI coordinators work closely with our host sites to create unforgettable experiences and opportunities for the local community to experience and connect with Japan. Cultural outreach activities can include anything from tea ceremonies, cooking classes, and Japanese language lessons to taiko drum lessons, martial arts practice, and business etiquette courses. JOI coordinators create ongoing student exchange programs and build sister city relationships between communities that create lifelong friendships. In 2002, the first JOI coordinators were dispatched to Tennessee, Alabama, and North Carolina and began their outreach activities. By 2007, 100,000 Americans had participated in JOI events. In 2009, the Japan Outreach Initiative expanded its outreach into the Midwest. By 2019, over 1 million Americans have participated in JOI events. Then, in 2021, we once again expanded our outreach, this time to the mountain region. To date, 83 JOI coordinators of all ages have held cultural outreach activities in 29 different U.S. states. The activities of the JOI program over its 20-year history have helped tie the U.S. and Japan together like strings in a beautiful mizuki, forging strong bonds between the people of our great nations. As the Japan Outreach Initiative continues to grow, we hope to #spread some joy in communities all around the United States. We appreciate you joining us in celebration of the rich 20-year history of the Japan Outreach Initiative. We are looking forward to many more.
And that brings us to the main content of our program this evening. We're going to move into our 2 panel discussions. The first panel discussion will be some of our former JOI coordinators and supervisors. We're going to look back on the 20-year history of the program, reflecting on the people-to-people connections that they made. And then the second panel discussion is going to be some folks representing the socioeconomic impact of cultural outreach programs such as JOI. And how grassroots connections really build not just the communities, but actually on the economic level as well. And then we'll round out the symposium with our keynote presentation by Japanese astronaut Naoko Yamazaki, who's going to have a very interesting presentation for us, talking about her experience traveling to space. I know that sometimes for our JOI coordinators, traveling all the way from Japan to the United States and to places that they probably have never heard of before can maybe feel a little bit like going into outer space. Today we're going to hear from somebody who's actually been to outer space and maybe put it in perspective just a little bit. But first, I'd like to introduce our first panel. So panel number 1, I'll invite them to stand up in just a moment. It's going to be Takio Suzuki, Natsuki Anderson, Asami Nakano, and Airi Yamamoto. But first, I'd like to introduce Maruyama. She is going to be the moderator of this panel. So Maruyama is executive director at Obirin Gakuen Foundation of America. Ms. Maruyama was an administrator for the JOI program and vice president for Laurasian Institution for many years and was even associated with the program at its inception. So her impact on JOI is still echoes through this day and probably will be felt in the program for many years to come. To this day, when I go around the country and talk to people about the JOI program, what it does, I'll ask them, do you know JOI? Do you know JOI program, Laurasian Institution? Sometimes they say, maybe I've heard of it, I don't know. Do you know Mari Maruyama? Oh, Mari, yeah, how's she doing? One of the best connected people I know. So yeah, I'd like to introduce everybody, Mari Maruyama and panel number 1. Mari will introduce the other panelists one by one, so take it away, Mari.
We didn't practice this. All right, where is the on? I've gotten to that age, of course, where do I wear glasses or do I not wear glasses? Well, thank you all for coming. I would like to introduce our panelists, and I think they're going to be, first, so in the photo that you see on the screen there, I'm with Maria Damoto, and Maria was with the JOI program from actually before it was even conceived, I think, because CGP had contacted a few Japan American societies before the JOI program was put together to see if something like this program would be of interest. And Maria was one of the people they interviewed, and she is the primary person who designed the training for the JOI program. And I think probably to date, much of that program, much of that training that she designed still exists. So this was taken a couple years ago when I saw her in Atlanta. So now I would like to introduce the panelists, and I cannot see you. Naki. Thank you. Naki Anderson. So Natsuki Anderson is associate professor and the chair of the Modern Language Department at Marshall University in West Virginia. She was the year 10 supervisor. Really happy to see Naki, and thank you for joining this panel. Next up is Asami Nakano. Yes, Asami. Asami was a year 12 JOI coordinator here at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. And she's currently a lecturer at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have Takio Suzuki. Takeo is very unusual in that not only was he a supervisor, he was actually a coordinator in year 2. And he was one of the first brave souls to apply to the JOI program that no one had ever heard of, and we sent him to Arkansas. So in year 2, he was in Little Rock as a coordinator and had a lot of many interesting experiences there. Then he was hired by the University of Arkansas Fort Smith, where he became a supervisor in year 8. And then he moved here and introduced University of Chattanooga, or University of Tennessee Chattanooga, to the JOI program, where Lucian Ellington then was Asami's supervisor in year 12. Thank you, Takeo. And it's been great to know you for all of these years, nearly 2 decades.
I didn't have no gray hair when I started. So,
Yeah,
yes.
I did notice that earlier. I wasn't going to say anything. You know, you could just go get hair coloring. Okay, which I use now. And then last but not least, I have Airi Yamamoto. And Airi was a JOI coordinator in Murray State in year 15 on Western Kentucky, the very, very edge of Western Kentucky. And she's now currently a Japanese language teacher in the Chicago public school system. She's been doing that. You're now 3rd year, right? Oh, 4th year doing that. So kind of a tough situation, but she's doing really well, and she took some students to Japan from those schools. So thank you. Thank you all for participating. Okay, so we don't have a whole lot of time. So I'm going to start off with asking Naki, why did you apply to the JOI program? What was your main objective, main goal?
First of all, I got an assistant professor job at the Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, where I have never been to. And because my job was to establish the Japanese major and minor in Huntington, West Virginia. So when I went there as a professor, there's not much going on. So JOI was a perfect opportunity for me to maximize the opportunities in the community and on campus to learn and share about Japanese culture and languages. So I became a supervisor, and we had a JOI coordinator in 2011 to 2013. The first one, Hana Yamada. And we didn't know what we are doing at first. But we had wonderful support from Mari-san or different people. And we actually had so many activities, much more than I first thought it was possible. Especially 2011 was the year of the earthquake. And without having Hana with me, we couldn't host many events we did for the fundraising and working with New York Consulate of General and having a quota player talk about the disaster. And 23 high school students from Cabot County in Huntington, West Virginia went to visit Tohoku area and with the Kizuna project. Then 2 months later, a group of high school students from Ibaraki came. So for these students, they never left West Virginia. And that's just life-changing experience for them to be able to go to Japan. We also had small project like local library, free Japanese lesson for middle school, high school. Just for every other week and a few months. But then 5 years later, I was just talking with my students who just came back from study abroad. And I was like, by the way, why did you start learning Japanese? And they tell me, well, I loved pop culture and I love anime and games, but I got serious when I took this free language course at the public library. And I was like, which one? We had that at the just downtown. And I'm like, wait, that's JOI. That's ours. We did that. Hana's lesson? And like, yeah. Like, why didn't you tell me that? So our effort of putting the seed in the community really blossomed, and it still continues.
Oh, thank you very much. I was remiss to mention Takeo's current position. He's executive director of the Center for Global Education at UTC. And really, I'm just so proud of you, seeing how you've grown all of these years. Now, why did you apply in Fort Smith, when you were at Fort Smith, to have a JOI coordinator? And also, can you also maybe share, you've got a unique position where you could share the difference between your experience in year 2 and then now, nearly 20 years. I mean, technology has changed as well. No more maps, paper maps. Do people know what paper maps are? Yeah.
Well, that's a big question, so I'll make it very short because everybody knows I speak a lot. But one of the reasons why we applied for JOI program at that time was state of Arkansas was inviting so many Japanese investment. And they asked if we can even start a Japanese Saturday school. And I didn't have enough resource for myself to start Japanese Saturday school, so I was hoping JOI coordinator would help facilitate start a Japanese Saturday school. And successfully in Little Rock, Arkansas, they started with the help from Japanese JOI coordinator. That's one. And also, with the Japanese investment coming, there are so many families coming in. And the community are happy, but also a little bit concerned because of Japanese, not the migration per se, but people coming. So local school superintendent to even the local grocery stores wanted to understand the Japanese culture and customs. So that was a perfect timing for us to have the coordinator help not only the financial investment, but local culture, the local community to establish the welcome environment once they start coming to some city across the state. So that was, I think, one of the reasons why we applied for it. And I think the Yoko did a fantastic job facilitating, working with the Japanese community and the Arkansas state government and local chamber of commerce. She did such a fantastic job. The big difference between second year and this is 19th year, going to 20th year, is probably the name brand is pretty established. When we started as a JOI, nobody knew what this is about. So I have to explain from the scratch. And that was probably the biggest difference. But like you said, the true meaning of this JOI program is to provide and extend the grassroots relationship. And as you know, that I met my even wife from this program. So I really owe JOI program, not only my professional career, but personal career. But there are so many great grassroots relationships happening, not only because of JOI, but beyond. The legacy the program is leaving behind is beyond the description, I think. So I'd like to say thank you for having me almost 20 years ago when I didn't have a gray hair. But I really like to help as much as I can, even for the future coordinators and program expansion.
Thank you so much. I'd like to turn to the coordinators. Asami-san, can you share a memorable experience, one or two, with the audience?
Yes, so I came to Chattanooga in 2013 for the first time, and I was very impressed with very warm southern hospitality in this area, in this city. And I met so many students at K-12 schools and universities. And some students are never seen Asians, never seen Japanese, but they are very curious. And I had so much activity with them. I get to know them, and it was just a very wonderful experience. And the local community, we had some Japanese community, and they always helped me for my outreach. And I'm so happy that we could do it together. Not only me, but local community was very supportive in this area.
I think I've heard a lot of past coordinators mention that one of the unexpected roles that they played was to connect with Japanese in the area. And then a lot of times, a lot of the Japanese didn't have that connection either. And so because of the presence of the JOI coordinator, they could be that catalyst. And I think that is important too. Yeah. Airi-san, how about you? What are some of your memorable experiences?
So I'd like to share one of the events I created during the JOI was Thousand Cranes project for Marshall County High School. So sadly, there was a school shooting at Marshall County High School in Benton, Kentucky, 2018. And 2 students were killed and 14 others were injured. It was such a huge news and broke local people's heart very bad. Everyone looked for something they can do for their family who lost their kids, for the school and the community in Benton. So this project was where I traveled many different communities and made a 1,000 paper crane symbol, a memorial, senbazuru, it's called senbazuru, and it's big, and for the Marshall County High School. It was in the session I told for the people who participate, in Japan, cranes are symbolic of happiness, long life, and peace. Also, people also make senbazuru for wishing the cure of illness or world peace. So the little kids to adults participated. Probably more than 800 local people made small a crane. It was really hard. It took a lot of time, but we finally made it. It was such a it brought huge positive impact to local community. It was even on local newspapers and TV broadcast. And senbazuru is still in Marshall County High School Common Hall. Little while later, the principal contacted me and she said, my students still ask me, and the local people who visit the school still ask me what senbazuru represent, and the people are moved by knowing what it means. And she also said it was definitely helped to heal people's heart. So that's the most memorable experience, and it's very interesting making connection to what happened in local and Japanese culture.
Thank you. I'm sure that the local people truly appreciated all of the effort of the different citizens of the towns around Marshall, Benton County, to do that. Thank you. So I think one of the themes of this symposium, of course, is why JOI matters. And so I'd like to ask the supervisors, what kind of experiences have you had since your JOI coordinator that shows why this JOI program matters?
I think the biggest achievement is to establish the sustainable cultural project and programs instead of just one-time culture presentation, just one visit. Instead, since I had the very first JOI coordinator, 2011, I helped to bring 3 more JOI coordinator to the state of West Virginia. And finally, last year, we established the full-time position as a Japanese outreach coordinator at Marshall University. So 2020. So we are ready to continue this effort. But of course, Corona happens. So what do we do? Last year, one of the annual event we have been doing is the Cabot County Summer Japanese Immersion Camp with the elementary school students for 1 week. We have actually 3 weeks of different sets of students. So about 50 students come and it's totally free and we even feed them and they learn Japanese and cultural activities. So I only support from the side usually, but last year I couldn't go home because of Corona. So, and they had to do it on Zoom. So they really asked me to help them. So I'm gonna do it. And I did it introducing the sports kendama. That's my new hobby. Kendama, it's not like the traditional kendama that I knew of. That's really slippery, and I can only do it a few times. But this American company called Sweets have this really good grip quality kendama for sports kendama, and it's a cool thing. It's like a street performers, like the kids who have skateboard has the kendama on their back pocket, and it's a cool thing. It's neat, but once they get into it, it's really neat. And my whole family has a whole series of kendama. Now, community, we get together in the park and do kendama. We have a kendama club. So I think it's one of the new thing we can get into. I just wanted to share that because we're always looking for ideas, right? We did the pop culture, we did the shodo. What do we do next? So kendama is one of the things.
Okay, Joy, you're 19 people. Learn how to do kendama. Contact Sweets, the Sweets company. Get a hold of Naki. She can give you a connection.
Yes, discount only for $10 each student.
Actually, I have to say, I can't remember the name of the middle school near Atlanta where they teach Japanese, but a JOI coordinator went up there. And actually, unrelated to JOI coordinator, they actually had a kendama club. Yoshi, I'll connect with you later. I can't remember the name of the middle school, but I was shocked. This was probably 10 years ago. So even before you, Naki, discovered.
Wow.
Yeah. So
it's neat, but that's one of the things that's continuously we are doing, and several JOI, even from Virginia, came and helped our summer camp so that they can learn how to do it and go back to their community and do it. So we were still doing it every year. Sounds like I have to get involved every year from now on, but we will do it, and we are so excited still. Like after all these years, I still get new ideas, and with the JOI, newer people, young people come and give me more ideas, and yeah, I can keep myself young. I love it.
thank you. How about you, Takeo?
Well, I don't know how to do kendama, so I need to learn how to do it now. But I think the most important thing is I'm very impressed about the presentation that how JOI program expanded from the south, the Midwest, the mountain region. This region, like when I was supervising in the city or even in the state, there are no more than 500 Japanese in the entire state at the time, Japanese. So without the coordinator assistant, people will not have a direct contact, not only Japanese culture, but Japanese person. Of course, they can learn so many culture from the screens or TV, but having a real person in a real setting make a big difference, especially if you are being through the K-12 students, completely different perspectives. Also, these JOI coordinators bridge the tiny gap between Japanese culture and American culture, and the American student get to understand the similarity and differences, especially the similarity side. They're happy to see the Pokemon card, both in Japanese and English. And some even kids do not know Pokemon is actually from Japan. For them, it doesn't really matter. And to me, it doesn't really matter. So I'm very happy that JOI is connecting those, and Japanese culture is becoming kind of the world culture, not stay only in Japan. I think that part is important. Japan is such a small country with such a small population. And I think it's important for them to understand, appreciate how we value our tradition. And then in the end, I really believe that will bring more peace. And I'm cutting so many short tangent story right here, but I think that will bring a lot of peaceful mindset, which we really need, especially post-COVID environment. But the expansion JOI is quite critical because the people do not have access to Japanese people, Japanese culture in those cities.
Thank you. One of the things that I remember Marshall and at Fort Smith, I think at Marshall we went to the Huntington Kitchen, and that was the first time. So Huntington Kitchen, what was the name of the British chef who helped the Huntington School District develop a more nutritional diet?
Jamie Oliver.
Oh, that's right, Jamie Oliver. Who's
Huntington happened to be one of these one of the poorest states. And yeah, British chef found that Huntington is the worst place to get fed at the school lunch. So he came, started this Huntington Kitchen in the community place in downtown and invited people to get lessons how to cook. So Hana Yamada, who happened to be a good cook, and she did series of Japanese cooking lessons, and that impacted some of the lunch menus as well.
Right, and it was in downtown Huntington, not on the campus of Marshall. So it really involved a lot of community members and students as well. So yeah. And then I remember one of the stories I remember, year 2, we were traveling with a CGP staff as well, and we went to Eudora, Arkansas.
Right.
And you had the mechanic who helped you when your car broke down. He actually fed us deep fried turkey. And I think it was the first time, and we had, I think, a couple of Japanese traveling with us. And it was their first time to have deep fried turkey and all of the fixings. This wasn't Halloween or anything, but because of meeting Takeo, this mechanic actually then became interested in Japan and stayed in touch with you while you were nearby. And often, I don't know, did we have email back then?
I did, yes, I did. But Eudora, Arkansas is the capital of catfish business. And I was actually on the way to visit New Orleans Council at the time. My car broke down in the middle of nowhere. You don't see anywhere but a cotton field and wheat field. And then this guy just fixed it. And I even didn't have money to pay for it. It cost about $600 at the time. I didn't have money, and he just fixed it. And I successfully went to the Council General's, I think, the end of year party. And then we went there, and then they never seen Japanese, period. Never, ever. So I quickly became very famous, and I met the mayor, I met the county judge. I became so famous, and I visited the county so often and talk about Japanese culture. And the school district loved me talking about Kansai Ben even. And then, no offense, but in the Eudora County, that everybody say chow chow means no. I told them how to speak Japanese in my way because I'm from Kobe. And they really enjoyed it. But that the tiny relationship, the spontaneous relationship can happen. And those are the things that it's very difficult to happen these days because everything electronic. But the in-person make a lot of big influence on somebody's life. And I think they even sent some students to the JET program later on from the high school program. The high school student went to University of Arkansas starting to start the Japanese language. And then he passed the second level Japanese proficiency test. I think he went on to participate in the JET program. So you never know how things happen in their life. They never saw, this person especially didn't think about going to Japan at all before my car broke down. So
I know, I'm sure he didn't. I just still remember that. And also how you helped Walmart and Seiyu, develop a relationship as well,
Right, so I had a really good relationship with the Arkansas Economic Development Office, so they offered me to translate quite a few language programs. So my Yoko and I translate the Japanese language, driving test into Japanese language. Also, when they have a delegation coming, they ask us to be a translator. So when Seiyu CEO came, I was there to translate between President Lee Scott and some other executive over there. Also, if you like golf, the Walmart hosts LPGA. So I was happy, very fortunate that I was a translator for Yamazaki, Yamamoto, right? I was translator for the professional golfer for a while. I could do this because it was such a small state, but it was very, very interesting experience. I personally had as a coordinator at the time.
And one last story about Arkansas. I think Yoko Kawata, your year 8 coordinator, is probably the only coordinator who has something published in and housed at the Library of Congress, right? You want to explain? This must have been very impactful because I still remember. So Fort Smith was the first place where they actually had a hanging.
Yes.
It's very morbid, but it's a national monument or
park, I think.
Park, and so Yoko translated the information about that site into Japanese, and it's now at the Library of Congress. So, you know, the JOI coordinators, you're 19 if you have a small national park or some kind of oddball memorial location. You translate it into Japanese, submit it to the Library of Congress, and then you can put that in your resume that you have something.
And on the top of that, thanks to her work, now they are working to build a U.S. Marshall Museum, which is about a $300 million project. And then I know they have some Japanese sponsorship. I'm not going to tell which company, but there's Japanese sponsorship. I think partially because of Yoko's translation, transfer to some information in the company in the state of Arkansas. That was amazing. Yeah.
So really, the coordinators have no idea what kind of impact they will have. And I think really the foresight of CGP, you know, of believing in the impact of the individual, of this grassroots is really key, and I think this is really proof of that. So Asami and Airi, please share, what do you think, I know you're still in touch with your host sites, what are some legacies that you feel like you've left behind?
So the two activities remain in that area in Murray, Kentucky are International Kite Festival and Cooking Club. So for the International Kite Festival, I worked with local arboretum and the agriculture department, and we created International Kite Festival for first time. So the local kids visit the festival to make own kite and visit the culture booths to learn different culture. Even the international student had a culture demonstrations that there. It was a huge success, and we brought more than 600 local people on that day. Now the event is run by ICALA, International Culture and Language Association in Murray State University, Japan Club, and other international students. I'm so glad it's keep doing that. And for the Japan Cooking Club, I created the Cooking Club to bring more people to get interested in Japanese culture and food. Of course, everybody likes food, and it was a huge success. We tried to make sushi, karaage, okonomiyaki, something they cannot really find at the local restaurant. And now, Japan Club students still go visit many different schools and continue teaching how to make Japanese traditional dishes.
Yeah, food is always, is there a, not nomi communication, but something with food communication?
Hi. So something I left behind is that after I finished 2 years, I could stay another 2 years as a graduate student at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and I could create a Japanese language program for next 2 years. So we did the Japanese class officially. So 3 of my students went to Japan while I was teaching Japanese. And 3 of them actually went to work in Japan as a JET program and also English teacher. And recently, I got email from one of my former students. He got like another business job in Japan, and he happened to be in Tono, which is sister city of Chattanooga. So I'm very happy for what they did. And also, by the time I leave, Takeo-san came. So, you know, the program is in
And
very good hands.
we had Yumi came.
Yes,
Joy, so
and Yumi came as another JOI coordinator, JOI 16, I believe. And she recently married. And I'm also married. So something that happened to both of us, really good thing.
Well, thank you. I think we are just about at our 30 minutes. And I thank you very much for listening. We have many, many, many stories. I just loved going to each of the sites and listening to what they've done, and also eating. I enjoyed eating at every different site. I remember David, I think Carpenter is here. I think, yes, I remember the brownie, that thing that you introduced me to. I'll never forget that brownie dish. So I think that's how I remember all the different JOI sites. So I'm happy to talk about the food if you want to come up to me later. But thank you. I really appreciate hearing your stories.
Thank you very much.
And having you share with the audience. And I know that the other JOI coordinators, the other supervisors, please share among yourselves during the reception and dinner. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, round of applause for panel one. So the good news is we have a jam-packed evening full of interesting information for you. The bad news is I wish we could spend more time with each individual part this evening, but panel number one will be here in the reception afterwards. So if you want to hear more of their stories, of their time on the JOI program, please find them. Please talk to them. They're all fascinating people to speak to. Two really interesting points that came up in that. The lasting impact of the individual, what one person can do when they go into a community and start making friends, making those friendships, making those connections. But also the in-person aspect of it. Whoa. That they actually uproot their lives. They come from Japan to live in that community. They become a member of that community. That's what makes that impact possible, that they're actually living there and becoming friends with the people in those communities. Like I said, I wish we could hear more from this amazing panel, but unfortunately we'll have to keep moving along. We're going to go into a short break right now, so everybody can stand up, and there's some refreshments out in the hall. There's a restroom out the hall and to the right, and we are going to come back and start the next session from 5:35. I think that's about 10 minutes from now. So make it quick, but everybody get up and have a stretch, and we'll see you in about 10 minutes. 5:35. Thank you. All right, if everyone can find their seats, we'll start the next section of our program this evening. It looks as if the no-munication has already started this evening. Don't worry, there will be time for networking and chatting with people in the reception immediately following this. So I'm sorry to cut you off short, but we got some more information, some more interesting discussions to listen to, so we want to get into that right away. I think we're mostly getting back in, so I think I'm going to go ahead and begin the next section. So our next panel discussion is going to be Japan in the South and the importance of grassroots exchange. So we're hosting the celebration this evening here in Chattanooga. So and JOI indeed began in the South. So we want to celebrate the specific connection between Japan and the South as sort of a case study for Japan and a lot of the sort of overlooked regions of the United States when it comes to these international relationships, because again, that's what the JOI program really stands for. In panel number two, we have some serious heavy hitters. We got some amazing folks, including we have Consul General Kayoko Fukushima. We are very honored to have her with us this evening. Masami Tyson, Yoshidomoto. We knew we needed somebody, a professional speaker, to keep this group in control. So we immediately decided to call Nozomi Morgan. Nozomi Morgan is the founder and CEO of Michiko Morgan Worldwide, a management consultant group that helps individuals and large corporations communicate effectively and find their ikigai, their reason for being. And personally speaking, Nozomi is such a nice, bright, happy, fun person to speak to that every time I walk away from a conversation with her, I just feel good inside. I bet you will too. So Nozomi, would you please bring the next panel up? And as they're coming up, how about a round of applause for our amazing panel number 2? Oh. And there she is, everybody, Nozomi Morgan.
Would help. So good evening, everyone. So it's such an honor to be here. So this is panel 2, and the title is Japan in the South, the Significance of Grassroots Exchange. And today we are focusing this panel on the South, as the title says, and we have distinguished, truly, it's such an honor to be here on the stage with all of you, so distinguished panelists from organizations that involve in the Japan-U.S. relationships. And we are going to discuss the Japan-U.S. relations and the presence of Japan in this region and the significance, if I can say that word, significance of the grassroots exchange in the South. So let me introduce, first we have, Consul General Fukushima, and for the Consulate General of Japan in Nashville. Round of applause. Thank you. And then next we have Yoshi Domoto, the Executive Director of the Japan-American Society of Georgia. And you actually have already seen him in a picture before. So later on at the reception, whoever figured out where you saw him before this panel in one of the slides, you get, what do we get? A special gift from Yoshi. Whatever that special gift may be. And if you want a hint, you can come and ask me, because I'll give you a little hint. And then lastly, but definitely not least, Masami Tyson. She is the Global Director of Foreign Direct Investment and Trade, the state of Tennessee. And also she is a chairwoman of Japan-American Society of Tennessee. Yes, so talking about heavy hitters here. There's so much we want to ask you. It's really difficult to choose the questions, but because you all have such a wonderful role and responsibilities and backgrounds, so we'd love for you all to start with an introduction of what you do, and also if you can tell us a little bit about, let's see, if you have some kind of grassroots experience as well, if you can share a little bit about that. So please start.
Thank you, Nozomi-san, for your kind introduction, and thank you for having me today, and it's very nice to see you all. I'm Kayoko Fukushima, Consul General of Japan in Nashville, and I've been Consul General for about a year and 10 months. And our consulate covers the 5 states in the South, which are Tennessee and Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, as well as Arkansas. And consulates covers to promote bilateral relations between Japan and those 5 state areas in variety of fields, including political relations and also business economic relations, as well as cultural exchanges. And maybe talking about my career experience, I joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan about 40 years ago in 1981. And as a part of the ministry, I was stationed in various places in the world, including Boston. I studied at the graduate school for 2 years in graduate school in Boston. And I was also at the Japanese consulate in New York, covering the JET program and other cultural affairs. And I was also working on press and media relations as well as culture exchanges as a part of the Japanese embassy in Thailand. I was stationed in Bangkok for 2 years and 4 months, as well as their being culture attaché a long time ago in Dublin, Ireland, for 3 years. So my work involves a variety of aspects of Japanese diplomacy, but I experience a lot of cultural exchanges in my positions. So I now know the importance of cultural exchanges, grassroots exchanges, as well as our coordination with the JOI coordinators. Like, for example, in our consulate at Nashville, in my early days of my work, it was in February 2019, I was in Chattanooga here, yes, and the consulate organized a film featuring the Chune Sugihara, who saved the lives of the many Jewish people in 1940s. And there, our consulate cooperated with, or got cooperation from, Miss Yumi Shimada, who was mentioned at the previous session and who is here. I'm very glad to see her today. And she was kind of instrumental in making the event a full house event, bringing in many students from University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, including those who belong to Japan Club, as well as local citizens. So that is the one of the example of our liaisoning or cooperating with JOI coordinators, or those who are engaged in grassroots events have turned out to be very successful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. What an amazing experience you have, and I know there's so much more. Well then, Yoshi-san, if you can share about what you do, and if also because I know, but you have a long history with JOI, and it's a family affair. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that as well.
Sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Yoshi Domoto. I'm the executive director of the Japan-American Society of Georgia. We are a nonprofit organization that basically brings together the Japanese and American communities together in Georgia through business, cultural exchange, educational programming, and also promoting friendship through social activities as well. So as Takeo-san in the previous panel, I may look a little different from the pictures shown, I guess, in the JOI commemorative video. But yeah, so I do have, I guess, some unique, I guess, connections to JOI. My father is Japanese, actually, and my mother's American. So I guess I'm sort of a product of grassroots exchange in a way. I moved from actually Japan to America, to North Carolina of all places. So I kind of subconsciously was involved with grassroots exchange and trying to teach about, my fellow friends about Japan and where I came from. At the same time, trying to learn English as a second language, as many JOI coordinators do, and then kind of learn about kind of the American way of life, particularly in the South, right? So, I grew up in both Japan and the U.S., but was lucky enough to be part of the JET program, which Consul General saw and continues to oversee too. And I was lucky enough to go to Osaka and teach English for 2 years there. And so I got to experience kind of the opposite viewpoints of the JOI coordinator, as a Japanese American going to Japan and teaching English and teaching American culture. After getting back from JET, I was lucky enough to get a position with the Japan-American Society of Georgia, and been kind of working with grassroots exchange ever since. I guess at the professional level too. But as Nozomi-san said, has some kind of behind-the-scenes experience with the JOI program. I guess one of the hints with the quiz that Nozomi-san mentioned was that my first connection with JOI was, I guess, during year one. I was in college, which kind of give away my age a little bit, but in a small school in Atlanta, we had the pleasure of helping some of the first-year JOI coordinators do some cultural training and kind of basically teach what it's like to live and work in the South. So I was, I guess, a pseudo kind of volunteer working from the side and helping the first year JOIs kind of get to learn, what it's like to live and work here, but also what it's like to maybe live with a host family and homestay, right? Which I think maybe that's a conversation we can have at the reception, but I think there's a whole lot of homestay and host family stories that we can kind of talk through during the communication. But yeah, so I've had a kind of very unique opportunity of kind of seeing kind of behind the scenes as a volunteer. And then kind of speaking of, I was a programs coordinator with the Japan American Society when we first hosted a JOI coordinator. At that time, the society or our organization was kind of coming out of a lot of challenges, and our JOI coordinator actually really helped kind of redevelop our organization and kind of build up our organization. So in a way, the legacy of JOI is really connected with our organization. Is that that JOI coordinator, really almost kind of saved our organization and kind of built to what it is today. And then just recently, we also hosted a JOI coordinator, and I was lucky enough to be the supervisor and really enjoyed my time kind of working together to kind of expand our outreach. As Georgia is a very large state. Atlanta is a big city, but any place outside of Atlanta, it's a very different, almost a different country. So we had the unique challenge of trying to promote Japan and Japanese culture and language in places outside of Atlanta in a very different demographic throughout the state of Georgia. So, but yeah, that's my story and sticking to it. But I think there's a lot more to talk about with Grassroots Exchange and how important it is, not just in the South, but throughout the world.
Yes, thank you. Definitely can hear your experience and your long history with the JOI program. And I think he left out something and about his mother also being involved in the program. You actually saw her in a picture, I believe, already. Again, another thing you can ask about him at the reception. So, Masami-san, you have an amazing background and your current role as well, so please tell us about you.
Thank you, Michiko-san. Sorry, Nozomi-san of Michiki Morgan. Hello, my name is Masami Tyson, and thank you so much for letting me be a part of this wonderful program. And I just want to say, I have to admit, I was not very familiar with JOI until I was asked to speak today, and I got to learn about it a little bit. And today, during the first panel, really now have a very good idea of what it is. And I've been thinking about how can I get some of these people to help me with my work. Actually, maybe we can talk about this at the reception. But as Nozomi-san said, my title is Global Director for Foreign Direct Investment and Trade for the state of Tennessee. And what that means is I work for the department that is tasked with creating jobs for Tennesseans. And the great news is 1 out of every 3 jobs that's created in Tennessee today is by foreign companies. And of the foreign companies that are in Tennessee, by far the biggest investor is Japanese companies. And so, of course, I am biased, but I am very proud of that, and I'm very grateful to the Japanese companies that have decided to invest in Tennessee. And as for Grassroots, just to tell you a little bit about my background, I was born and raised in Japan. I'm from Yokohama. I was there until I was 18, and then I came to the United States to go to college. So I think that perhaps sort of what Yoshi was saying, I'm sure that I engaged in grassroots exchanges daily as I came and became a student here and learned to live in the United States and, just develop friendships and relationships. And then, without really knowing that that was what I was doing, because I think I remember moments where, I would have care packages from my mom come, and this is way before the days of internet and any of all that good stuff. So, those care packages were very, very, very important to survival, and it would include little treats and things like that from Japan. And I remember my roommates asking me what, certain, Japanese delicacies were, and I would explain. So there was that experience. And then in my daily work, so as I said, I help recruit foreign companies to come to Tennessee. And I witness that all the time. So what I mean by that is, as I said, our job is to create jobs and then, capital investment. And, Senator Hagerty took my punchline, actually. So let me repeat. There are over 53,000 jobs created by Japanese companies in Tennessee. That's over $19 billion investment. I don't think he mentioned this, so let me tell you, that's 200 companies in Tennessee. And those numbers are impressive, and we are grateful for that. But what I love the most is the relationships that develop as a result of that. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that just because I'm on this panel. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. What I get to see is these Japanese companies, some expats, come over and, create a home in Tennessee and then get to become a part of the communities. So I think, Gabriel, you were talking about how Laurasian and the other organizations represented here facilitate the creation of those relationships with the communities. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's exactly what I do. So I recruit these companies to come here, our department recruits these companies to come here, but the rest, the communities and the companies do on their own when it comes to relationship building. And I can come up with many stories to tell you, but there's one I can share. This is a company called Denso, which is in East Tennessee, in Maryville, and they have created thousands of jobs. And so, of course, we're grateful for that. But there was a project a couple years ago where the Denso wanted to do something for the local community. So what they did was they took a American English language children's story and translated it into Japanese. And I was very fortunate to be able to be a part of that. I translated that. And when you go to these state parks, they have these story trails or book trails. And so kids would walk along paths and then they get to see a page at a time, so many feet apart. So it was a symbol, a token of that community, Maryville's gratitude towards Denso for coming into the community and creating jobs and really assimilating into the community. So I guess I'll leave it at that. There's many more things I could say about this, but at the end of the day, whether it's job creation, and you mentioned I'm also the chair of Japan-America Society of Tennessee. We talk about all this fancy stuff and statistics, and I try to impress you with numbers, but at the end of the day, it's about those relationships, and it really does come down to the one-on-one. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Oh my gosh, it's like we can leave now. Just to wrap it up. No, so as you can tell, all of you are really doing, in your everyday work, it's about grassroots, relationships, exchange, connections. And I would love to hear why you do the work that you do. Is it okay if you go first?
Yes, because I skipped to talk about my first experience of grassroots exchanges, let me say, and connect it to the question by Nozomi-san. Yes, I am originally from Osaka, which is in the western part of Japan. And my family was not really, associated with some international things. Like my background was rather domestic. And I didn't have any relatives who work in the field of international affairs. And my family didn't go abroad until we made a trip to Guam when I was an elementary child. And but when I was an elementary school student, there was the Osaka Banpaku, which is the Osaka Expo, large-scale world exposition held in Osaka. And it was so popular among my schoolmates. And we've been saying, how many times have you been to the World Exhibition? And so I had a chance to go there a few times. And when I first went there, it was the Scandinavian Pavilion. And they had a very beautiful picture, like a widescreen picture of field over there. And it was so beautiful. It was like a stained glass and like white. And I really wanted to go there, get there, or maybe study there. And that was the big impact which was made on me. And later, I visited the Pakistan Pavilion for lunch. And they had the curry buffet. And they had a variety of curries. But during that time, especially in Osaka, when we thought curry, it was just one kind, like instant curry. So I was surprised to see so many kinds of the curries, the color of soup, and also as well as the variety of ingredients. So I really sensed that the world is very wide. And also with my schoolmates, I visited the Cyprus pavilion of Cyprus. And the pavilion was not really big. And it seems that there was only one associate who was there when we went there. And it was the young male associate. And he was very friendly. And we couldn't speak English very well, but we tried to use all the simple words we had. And we have just kind of managed to communicate with him. And we had a very heartwarming experiences in communicating with him in English. So since then, I really felt that I wanted to improve my English and visit foreign countries and maybe live there and meet with many foreign people. And that was the first grassroots experience which I had. And my kind of a dream at that time came true. And I'm now here, and I'm very happy about my current job. Yes. Thank you very much.
Well, I just think that's so amazing to hear, like the childhood experience, right? The variety of curry. Who knew that would inspire to become someone who's a diplomat and really lives and works around the world?
Food is important.
Food is important. Yes, it is, right? So, we talk about all these things that all of you here are doing just make such a big impact, and we really never know how that would evolve and unfold. So I just think that's such an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's change it up a little bit. Why don't we ask Masami-san to answer the same question?
Why I do the work I do?
Yeah, what motivates you?
What motivates me? So I guess it's some of the things that I've already shared with you about. It's about the people-to-people connection. And I think, without sounding too dramatic, I really believe that the work I do changes lives. Because, if you're creating jobs, and think about a Japanese multinational company that comes to a rural community, creates 200 jobs, that's a life changer for the people who are able to become a part of that. So I find my work meaningful, and that's why I do what I do. Incidentally, I practiced as an attorney for about 15 years before I came to this position, but I made the deliberate decision to leave that career and to come into public service for that reason. But again, I find it meaningful because of the end result of, job creation being a life changer, but also because of the relationship building that happens in the process. And I wanted to add that another element of my job that I enjoy is being able to witness that, and on a very small scale, being a part of that relationship building. So naturally, with the Japanese companies, I play a bigger role, although I do oversee all of it. So my role is global director, so I do interact with all the foreign companies that come to the state, or at least I'm involved in that. But I suppose the cultural sensitivity that I have as a result of my background, my upbringing, which all of you in this room have, naturally, makes a huge difference. And so whether it's with a Japanese company or a German company, I don't speak the language, I've only visited a few times, but nevertheless, I am aware that there is a cultural difference, that there may be some things that, I need to learn, that I shouldn't take things for granted. One interesting thing is, of course we all converse in English, but the same words can mean different things depending on the culture. But I'm aware of that, and so I can approach that situation with that awareness. And I just want to reiterate, I'm so impressed by the JOI program because it's about that, isn't it? You bring the awareness, you show people, you tell people that here's a different culture, and that makes the difference in the world. And of course, each one of us cannot, teach everything to everyone, but it's a wonderful start. So anyway, so that's why I do the work I do, and that's why I enjoy it. And of course, I get to interact with my Consul General, who is in Nashville, so I love that part of my job.
I love that part too.
There's mutual love happening here. It's a really lovable stage. Wonderful, thank you. So, Yoshi-san, same question. How about you? Why do you do the work that you do, and what really motivates you every day? I know for everyone, it's not an easy job. I know they have a lot of hardships.
Yeah, well, I think I can maybe share some personal stories why, and then also professionally too, and then. But personally, I was born in Japan. My father is Japanese, my mother is American. So, I stuck out. I didn't look very Japanese. Still don't. I don't think too much, right? But like for example, going to like Nyugakshiki, like the entrance ceremony for first grade. I was the only kind of brown-haired boy in the picture, and so I stood out, and and then kind of coming to the U.S. after that, I stood out again because, I wasn't blonde hair, blue-eyed, or, actually people here in America didn't know what I was. People thought I was maybe Hispanic, or I even got Eskimo for some reason, but that's a whole different story. But yeah, so I always felt, where do I belong in the world, right? So am I Japanese, am I American? But it was through kind of grassroots exchange of all my experiences, kind of growing up, I certainly have my parents to thank and the friends that I made over the years too. But it's through those relationships, as Consul General and Masami-san has talked about, and all the panelists beforehand, that I truly learned, I guess, my place, which is I belong everywhere, and I am part of the world, and I'm both Japanese and American at the same time, and. So I found my true belonging because of Grassroots Exchange on a personal note. Professionally, like Tennessee, Japan is Georgia's #1 foreign investor too. There's over 600 Japanese affiliated companies in Georgia that have invested over $11 billion, and about 40,000 people are employed by Japanese companies. So a lot happened economically and through business. And I don't want to say it's because of Grassroots Exchange, of course. Companies from Japan and, companies from, anywhere outside the U.S. Coming to a particular state, they come because of, business reasons and, what's the best business climate, what's the best environment for success. But Grassroots Exchange helps kind of build that environment, that ecosystem that helps make a lot of those kind of non-business related kind of endeavors be successful, whether it's an easy place for expats and their families to come in and kind of live in and go to school. But yeah, it's I think Grassroots Exchange plays a very important role in economic development, and it helps kind of bring in jobs, and it's certainly that ecosystem. The Grassroots Exchange, whether it's formal events or festivals like Japan Fest, in which we have 20, 25 people come. each year during normal years, before COVID, or kind of smaller, kind of conversation groups that our JOI coordinator helped start, which is called the Nihongo Eigokai, which is kind of help bring smaller people together for more intimate kind of collaboration. For smaller gatherings to big events, I think Grassroots Exchange really, truly allows people to get to know one another on a personal level. That's everlasting. I know since we're kind of celebrating JOI, many of the JOI coordinators that I had a pleasure of working with still, contact us, stay in touch with their host families and homestays, and they celebrate and send Christmas cards and nengajos to each other. So it's really everlasting. And in today's kind of very strange society, a lot of things are sort of divisive, sort of not, but at the same time, people are labeling each other, right? But I think that's why Grassroots Exchange and kind of the people-to-people relationship is more important than ever. To kind of really bring the people together here around the world. And, peace and understanding is, I think, going to be so important moving forward with all the kind of security issues or other difficulties that, we're having, whether it's internationally or domestically. So I think, Grassroots Exchange is definitely a pivotal part of our society, and kind of the with any kind of society or any project or campaign, the top-down and bottom-up approach is always kind of key to success. And so I certainly commend the Laurasian JOI program, CGP, Japan Foundation, everyone from at kind of large organizations that support Grassroots Exchange, but then all the smaller community organizations and people involved in it to help out from the bottom up too. So hopefully. This would be a great way to, continue on the legacy and, 20 years and many, many more, hopefully. So, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I heard at the very beginning a little bit of a rivalry between like Georgia and Tennessee. I heard him, put it in there, just a little bit. It's okay. It's a healthy competition. So let's talk about sister city relationships, because that's one way that Grassroots really shows up. And I know between Tennessee and Georgia, you all have a lot of sister city relationships. So Council General Fukushima, can you please talk about what do you think about sister city relationships? But also, I know you have a really good example that was in Mississippi, a Japan festival, that one of your JOI coordinators from year 18, I believe, played such an important role to have this Japan festival.
Okay, talking about sister city relations, in our 5-state area, we have about 21 sister city relationships, and Tennessee has 8. And this week, I happen to have to make 2 visits which are related to sister city relations. Today, prior to this event, I had a chance to visit a local school in Chattanooga, and that was the Chattanooga School for the Arts and Sciences. And we arranged to donate the books related to Japan, and that's why I visited there. But they are cherishing their good relations with Tono in Iwate Prefecture. As mentioned before, there's a sister city relations. And although they could have mutual visits prior to the COVID, they are not able to make it. But today, I've noticed that they have a large display case with things that they brought from Tono, and they are cherishing it. And also, they are cherishing their relations with Japan. They are looking forward to resume sending their students to Japan next year, hopefully. And also, prior to that, or early this week, I had a chance to visit Sumano, and Sumano has a good sister city relations with Zama in Kanagawa Prefecture, and they celebrated their 30th anniversary of their sister city relations. And like Maryville and Denso, Sumano has a Nissan factory, and so does the Zama city in Kanagawa. And their relationship started because both of them have Nissan factories. But they have developed them to have some exchanges with schools and also students, like they had mutual visits. And during the COVID-19, they couldn't, do it. But Sumano City made a Zama Park to remember the sister city relations in Sumana. So those are the very nice examples of the sister city relations. And in each event, I could feel Southern hospitality. I think that their Japanese partner cities, have been enjoying for many years. And our Japan Festival Mississippi turns out to be very successful. Like we at the consulate organized it with the help of the then JOI coordinator in Jackson, Mr. Daiki Suematsu. And we showcased Japanese culture with tea ceremony, Japanese dance, Japanese drum, Japanese sake, and various things. And we anticipated or hoped to have about 1,000 visitors, participants in it. But the turnout was 2,000. And we could have very favorable or positive responses and comments in our questionnaire we did afterwards, as well as the local press coverage. So those are the some examples of the successful events we coordinated with the help of JOI coordinator, or maybe with the sister city relations. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That's amazing. Especially, I remember you shared that with the Japan Festival, because it was right after or during COVID, and how hard that is to have an in-person event. But you pulled it off, and they had 2,000 people in this time. That's absolutely amazing. So congratulations. Yes. So we're down to like 5 minutes, or we're down to the last question. There's so much things I want to ask, but because we don't have much time left, let's really try to wrap this up. I would love to hear, what does grassroots mean to you? Grassroots exchange, grassroots relationship, exchange, whatever it is, in your own words. What does that mean to you? Or it could be, why is it important to you? I see confused faces. It could also be, what do you see of grassroots in the future? Anyway, just or I could say final words that you want to share with the audience around grassroots exchange, grassroots relationship. And let's start with, just change it up for the last time. Let's start with Yoshi-san, and then we'll go Yoshi-san, Consul General, and then Masami-san. Okay?
Well, I think we've kind of talked about the essentialness and the importance of grassroots exchange, and so maybe I'll kind of talk about two very quick stories, and then kind of why it's so important, I think, right? So, kind of talking about sister cities, as Consul General just did. Because of the JOI program, we were able to do more sister city or kind of partnerships and activities in Georgia. We have 10 sister cities in Georgia, some more active than others, and there's a sister state and also prefecture, and then sister port as well. But just kind of two quick stories is, because of the sister city relationship, we are part of the Asian Pacific Children's Convention, where we get to send 10 and 11-year-olds, elementary and middle school students to Japan every year to be part of a cultural exchange. And as part of that program, we actually have to do a performance to kind of showcase our grassroots and kind of our cultural presence. So when we hosted the JOI coordinator, she was actually our chaperone, and so she taught our kids how to do soranbushi, but actually not just that, but then the kids taught her how to do some American dances, including like the Cupid Shuffle, which is like the hip hop version of what the electric slide, right? So, but yeah, so kind of dance, kind of there's language barriers, but through, I think, dance, they were able to really kind of connect at a personal level, and the the weeks and days leading up to the exchange, they practiced their dance, and that really built a bond between the JOI coordinator and the students that we sent to Japan, and they really had just had a wonderful time. And then kind of another, just one quick story is that in 2016, 5 years ago, Atlanta hosted the Grassroots Exchange, where we hosted over 200 people from Japan for kind of a 10-day program where people kind of did some tourist activities, but then the main part of the program is where they went to actually 16 different cities, many of them actually part of the Metro Atlanta area, but many of them kind of really far away, as far as 5 hours away, which was kind of part of the sister city kind of the network. We still hear back from the Japanese visitors that we had, even today, that that was the kind of the best experience that they had. Wasn't going to the tourist attractions, but spending time with the families, and kind of really learning about the American lifestyle, and spending kind of time in rural parts of Georgia, and kind of really learning Americana and American culture. So I think that's kind of what embodies Grassroots Exchange, and those kind of two stories a little bit. And I just wish that we could do so much more activities. I know that a lot of times the manpower, the resources, and kind of the funding is always an issue with nonprofit organizations, Grassroots Exchange programming. But I think the JOI program has certainly planted a seed of what could happen, and kind of larger scale. So hopefully we can all help in this room, and everyone kind of tuning in online, that we can do play our own part in Grassroots Exchange and keep it going and expand it, and kind of really use that as a tool to really promote peace and understanding throughout the world.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciated what you said, playing each person playing a role. I think that is so true. All of us can do something, and I think that's really the beauty. Thank you for that message. Yes, Consul General Fukushima, how about you?
Yes, like maybe as my experiences in Expo 50 years ago, still living as a vivid memory in myself. I think that is the person-to-person exchange, which lingers in the hearts of people. And also the mayor of Smyrna City I met earlier this week, she promotes the sister city relations with Zama, and her family started the exchange. Her family was involved in these exchanges for many years. Like her grandfather had the exchange with people of Zama, and so did her parents. So I felt that with the passion and dedication of the people, I think it would last over generations.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful story, too. It's amazing to hear 3 generations of relationships. If I can just imagine everyone here, especially JOI coordinators, the work that you do, if you can imagine that will be 20, 30, 40, 50, hundreds of years of relationships that you are creating. Yeah, that's a wonderful story. Thank you. Okay, Masami-san, bring it home.
I don't know that there's much to add now, but let me just answer one of your other questions about what is Grassroots Exchange going to look like in the future. And I think it's going to look very much the same, because as many people have already said, it has to be person to person. And I'm glad that we are taking advantage of virtual tools. So maybe that aspect will change or look a little more advanced, I guess, 20 years from now. But at the end of the day, I think it's person to person. And I think it has to be the face-to-face. And that's very Japanese. And I'm American enough that for a time I thought it's just too many meetings and we don't really have to see each other. But we do. And I think we all realize that now after the pandemic or during the pandemic. So that's one thing. The other thing is I'm just going to have to repeat what both Yoshi and Consul General have already said, which is, number one, I think each person does his or her own part wherever they are. And I hate to put you on the spot, but I loved your story about the senbazuru, the 1,000 cranes, because that is such a fantastic example. Because if you think about it, that's something people can do even if you don't speak each other's languages. You can sit there in silence and do it. And I love the idea that you have brought something that's Japanese in so many ways, but that it's a healing tool, and you brought it into your community. And I just find that to be such a wonderful example of this grassroots exchange. And then finally, what Consul General said about just things lasting. And I will finish with this story. So our very first foreign direct investment, sort of official company in Tennessee, was Toshiba. And it happened during the color TV trade war, or I think many of you are too young to remember this, but back in the 70s, so there was a lot of Japan bashing that was happening. And there were pictures in the news of Americans taking a sledgehammer and destroying Toyota cars, and also Japanese appliances. So long story short, Japanese companies were told that if they wanted to sell Japanese products here, they were going to have to make them here, manufacture them here. And as a result of that, back in the 70s, Toshiba decided to come to Tennessee and built a color television factory there. Sadly, it closed and no longer there, but there is a Toshiba Drive still in Laverne, Tennessee. So what I'm trying to say is that, so that company left. But again, as I told you, there are 200 companies from Japan today. And it really sort of followed one after another. So Toshiba came, and other Japanese companies said, well, if Toshiba chose Tennessee, there must be some good things about Tennessee. There must be a reason why they came there, and so on and so forth. And we are still reaping the benefits of that first investment, that first relationship. And so you talked about the people to people and legacies, and Consul General's story of the expo so many years ago. But it is the same with what's happening on an economic and business level. But again, just to remind you, it's about people.
Yes. Well, thank you all very, very much. This is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our amazing panel number 2. That was really fascinating. I'm going to throw my two quick impressions at you real quick. So first of all, I think it's really fascinating that the panel that was essentially supposed to kind of be about the economic impact ended up being about those people-to-people connections. Tells you a lot about what that people-to-people, those connections, what kind of an impact that has on the community, and then, of course, the companies that are in there. Number 2, I think we really do need to figure out a good word for eating communication. We got no communication. We got to figure out something for eating. I think that's going to be happening here pretty soon here. Mogu-nication? Mogu-mogu? I don't know. That one needs work. We'll figure it out. Finally, this evening, we are going to finish up with a keynote address by Ms. Naoko Yamazaki. This is going to bring our symposium section to a close, and then we'll move on to the reception in the other room. Ms. Yamazaki is a former JAXA astronaut and mission specialist aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery with NASA. She was the second Japanese woman in space and the last Japanese astronaut to crew the Space Shuttle. She is a trailblazer and an incredible role model for all of us for what she has done on the international stage. Today she has an amazing message for all of our past, present, and future JOI coordinators and supervisors. Without further ado, Ms. Naoko Yamazaki.
Congratulations on Japan Outreach Initiative, JOI's program's 20th anniversary. I am Naoko Yamazaki, Japanese astronaut. It is my great privilege to join you in this celebration. I started learning my English when I was in a junior high school. At that time, I had a pen pal in Ohio State. And it was a great motivation for me to learn English. We exchanged lots of pictures and postcards, and I had a dream at that time to study about space in the United States someday. And that dream came true when I was a graduate student. I had an opportunity to study at the University of Maryland for 1 year as an exchange student, thanks to Rotary Club Scholarship and Amelia Earhart Scholarship. It was my very first time to be outside of Japan, so everything was inspiring to me. When I landed at the Washington Dulles International Airport, I had a smell of popcorn. It was very impressive. And I learned a lot of cultures from students, of course, in the United States, and from various countries as well. And that experience inspired me to pursue my career as an astronaut. After 11 years of training, I was on board Space Shuttle Discovery and the International Space Station in 2010. And I operated a robotics arm and did scientific experiment for the assembly and resupply mission to the International Space Station, ISS. Well, microgravity was so much fun because you can make any posture. There is no absolute up and down. So when we have a conversation, we have to say, you're up or you're down instead of just up and down, because just up and down doesn't mean anything. So we have to consider others' position during the conversation. And when I first saw the Earth from space, it was very breathtaking moment. During the daytime, I was impressed with the power of nature. And at night, I was also impressed with the power of human beings, civilizations. And at the moment of the sunrise, it is so beautiful. And at the same time, I was surprised to see how thin the layer of the atmosphere is. So I felt the power and the fragileness of the Earth at the same time. Before I went to space, space was very special to me. And space was a desirable place for me to reach out. However, once I reached there, well, I realized the Earth is that special, and the Earth is a miracle place. So I changed my perspective by 180 degrees. It was an overview effect. Well, I love sci-fi movies, and my favorite is Space Odyssey 2001. It was on the screen in 1968 and still inspiring. Of course, I love Star Wars, Star Trek, and Gravity and Arrivals and Martians. And I believe human beings will be able to land on Mars in the near future. And recently, I was so excited to see William Shatner, Captain Kirk, reached space at the age of 90 years old. He broke the record of the eldest person in space. And I hope more and more people will be able to access to space. With more and more people in space, then the cost of space transportation will be decreased, and it inspires more and more people. So there will be a synergy. And at the same time, more and more people in space will create a new culture, I hope. Well, the culture exchange was very important in space as well. I, brought some Japanese space food and with seaweed and white rice and some boiled fish. I hosted a hand-rolled sushi party one night. And of course, I enjoyed some, space foods from various countries as well. And I received the question, who makes better space food, JAXA or NASA? And I would say both. I enjoy Japanese space food, and at the same time, I loved mac and cheese and chocolate brownie from NASA. So I would say both. And also I brought a Japanese musical instrument, which is called koto, like a guitar, but a miniature version. Koto has 13 strings, and I played Cherry Blossom songs in space. So we enjoyed cultural exchanges because trust and teamwork are essential in spacecraft. And to build trust and teamwork, we need to understand each other's cultures and we need to understand each other's better. So grassroots activities are very important. During the training period, we held lots of home party and to create a better understanding each other. So that is why I greatly appreciate your activities in the past decades and your passion to exchange cultures and cultural outreach to various people. So thank you very much for what you are doing. And my heroes are teachers and instructors in my school days and in my astronaut training days. So you are a teacher of the culture. So JOI coordinators and supervisors, you are all my heroes. Thank you very much again for your contributions. And I wish each of you all the best and happiness. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Yamazaki. When we received that message, I was so thrilled that she expressed that her heroes were the people doing this kind of work, education, the coordinators, the supervisors. Forgive me the pun, I was over the moon about it. Sorry. I was going to say, I'm sure you all want to hear my words of wisdom, but after that pun, probably you do not. So we're going to roll right on into the reception at this point. Don't worry, I'll throw my words of wisdom at you later on after you've had some drinks, and I sound much more knowledgeable at that point too. I do want to point out, so it's just a little bit after 6:30 right now, we are going to start the reception at exactly 7 o'clock, and we are going to start with a performance by Matsuriza, the taiko drumming group. They are going to start right at 7 o'clock. They're going to kick off our reception with a bang, and I mean that literally. They are super energetic, super powerful. It's an amazing performance. You may know Matsuriza. They're kind of famous for, they are the Japanese taiko drumming group that performs at Epcot Center in Walt Disney World. So if you've ever seen them, then that's them there. We are also going to have a kanpai speech immediately following that. So the bar, I believe, is now open. Everybody please head over there and get a drink so you have something to toast with right after that drum performance. I think that's everything I need to let you know before we go into the break. I guess it just remains for me to express that I hope after this presentation we had this evening, our two panels, everybody feels like they have a slightly deeper understanding about the relationship between Japan and the South specifically, but also using that as a case study for the way Japan interacts with different cultures around the communities around the United States, and how our friendship is so important to both of our great countries. So we're so happy to celebrate this 20th year anniversary with this discussion, which is just exciting, great conversations to have anyway, but even better to have it for this exciting event. So we will see you in the room right next door for the reception. Dinner will be served at starting at 7 o'clock, so we'll see you there right then. Thank you very much.